Hello everyone, you're all very welcome back to another video here on An Cluiche with me, Séamus Brady, our host, and for this one I'm joined by Matthew Hurley, the Gaelic Statsman. We are going to run through the last few days of the GAA. We're going to run through any news that happened. So we're not specifically going to talk about the club championship. We're just going to talk about the last week in the GAA and run through the news that has happened, pretty much off the field type stuff, and then see how that will affect the on-field stuff. But when it comes to the on-field stuff, obviously, Matthew, I did a video where I literally tried to run through every single bit of action which happened in the club championships across the weekend. I seen yourself and Aaron did the same thing. Just in brief, how have you enjoyed the club championship? It really exploded into life over the last weekend.
Definitely with a load of club winners from last year going out of the championship. And yeah, thanks for having me on again, Seamus. Like when you think about it, Kilmacud Crokes going out of Dublin, St. Pinbar's going out of Cork. The biggest shock for me was Port Arlington going out of Laois. I didn't expect that when I seen that scoreline. That was just absolutely mental. And the fact they went out not to Port Laois or not to any other big enough club, it was St. Joseph's, kind of a little club. So it was an incredible result that way. Aerogenis going out in a penalty shootout in Clare. You'd Westport going out in Mayo. So I think that must have been a record how many county champions actually went out. Dunloy in Antrim also went out. There was a load, absolute load that went out. So yeah, the club championship has been enjoyable for that reason. I suppose the games haven't been enjoyable because of the weather, but obviously we can't. That's the thing we can't control. We can't control if there's going to be Storm Agnes or Storm Barry or whatever. The next star will be called now, but yeah, that's just the weather, and we can't really control that. But other than that, I think the score lines and the results of the club championships has been very interesting. And last weekend definitely took a new high.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like for me, the Dunloy result was the big one for me. That I couldn't believe how easily Dunloy were beaten. Like the 121 to 13 points they lost. Like that's not a defeat. That's a beat down. Like they got comfortably put away by Lochiel Shamrocks. But yeah, this isn't a video talking about the club championships. This is a video talking about the news outside of it. And we've had a couple. So we've had new managerial announcements into the backroom teams as well. Then we've also had the Footballer of the Year candidates in both the men and the women's, which we're going to have a look at here as well. And then on top of that, of course, JARLY stepping away from Armagh, which is huge when you're talking about the big picture of who can compete for the All-Ireland. But we're going to start with the biggest bit of news, in my opinion, over the past week. Obviously, Mickey Hart shook up the GAA world, and then rightfully so, there were questions of who would step in to fill his shoes as Louth boss. Ger Brennan is that man to fill his shoes as Louth boss. He becomes the new Louth manager. A star-studded backroom team, but for Ger Brennan, I mean, timing-wise, immediately I'm looking at this and thinking, tough time to take over Louth, because Mickey Hart kept them in Division 2. They made it to a Leinster final. What really more can you do? And now Mickey Hart's left. That's some big shoes to fill. And for Ger Brennan as his first job as the main man, it's a tricky one.
Definitely is, yeah. And as you mentioned there, the backroom team has been very, very interesting. When it was named, like Niall Moyne in there, he's a very interesting candidate to have. I know the likes of Samuel Roy, Conor Rowley would actually love his influence on the team. Like he's done a lot of work with St. Vincent's. I've seen in the Dublin Club Championship, and you look at James McCartan, it's a very interesting one. I actually posed the question maybe to Aaron. Is it kind of a situation like at Leitrim where Mickey Graham went in to help Andy Moore? Is James McCartan coming in to help Ger Brennan? Possibly so, because the experience that James McCartan has, obviously at All-Ireland finalist and down in 2010. So yeah, I think it's kind of a risky appointment, Ger Brennan. And I think it's going to be interesting in the Alliance League now, because I think it's going to be between Cavan and Louth to stay up in Division 2. Fermanagh could be already gone. And it's two rookie managers in Ray McGalligan and Ger Brennan. So it'll be interesting who will get the upper hand. Will it be Galligan? Will it be Brennan? It's going to be very interesting. What's also going to be interesting, who's going to get home advantage in that game? Because home advantage between Louth and Cavan is going to be absolutely massive. But I think the main aim for Ger Brennan this year is to keep Louth in Division 2 and get as far as you can in Leinster. And if you're in the Tailteann Cup, go on and win it. So that's what Ger Brennan has to do next season. I don't think he's probably going to do better than Mickey Hart ever did with Louth. Like Mickey Hart's an absolute magician in the coaching circles of the game. So it's going to be very hard to fill those shoes.
That's absolutely right. And I remember I read a book about Dublin from the Barron years from 1996 to 2010, and in the period where we won one in 95 and 2011. And it was talking about when Mickey Whelan took the job in 1996, and was saying Mickey Whelan's a fantastic football coach and a great manager. But I'll never forget this quote, and I've used it throughout, having this podcast. I've said, when the only way is down, it's not fun being the pilot. And that's the whole thing, is that for Louth, can you do much better than what Mickey Hart did? Not really, in my opinion. So for Ger Brennan, he can be as good a coach as he likes, but all he can do really, in my opinion, is maintain what Mickey Hart did. I don't think they can get better than that, and I think they can actually take a step backwards. And I think if he was coming in at a different time with Louth, I think he'd have a far easier time of it, especially if Mickey Hart goes on to do well with Derry, which I think he will. So it's really, really tricky, and really, I agree with you. I think that whoever gets home advantage in that game between Cavan and Louth, I think they're right up to a flyer potentially there. But it's going to be very, very interesting to see. And obviously, we mentioned the Derry manager, Mickey Hart, now, which sounds crazy to say still to this day. But the former manager of Derry last season, Kieran Mina, he has joined the Down backroom team. And I have to say, I found this one to be under the radar. It's kind of gone under the radar because Kieran Mina, I mean, he'll know those Derry players inside out. I mean, Down will be wanting to make a bit of a push next season and compete for Ulster. They'll want to take another step forward. Kieran Mina, when he stepped away from the Derry job, I thought he was done with management. But to see him so quickly back into another county's backroom team, does that surprise you?
Maybe not so, because he did such a good job with grounding that Derry team last season. I'm actually surprised that, I know Mickey Hart's an unbelievable coach, but I'm actually surprised that Kieran Mina wasn't kept on as Derry manager. I think this is an amazing coup for Down. Really, really good. Like Mark Clark's there in the backroom team, obviously in All-Ireland finalists as well in 2010. You've Conor Laverty there, who's probably one of the best young coaches in the country at the moment. He probably doesn't need as much guiding as Ger Brennan and Andy Moore, but it's still brilliant to have Kieran Mina in the backroom team, who's been Rory Gallagher's right-hand man for Derry, and then he took up the reins last season and did a decent job. Like, he won the Ulster title. He got to the All-Ireland semi-final where he got very, very close to Kerry, and arguably closer than the Derry team the year before against Galway. So he did an absolutely brilliant job there. So I think he'll do as good for Down next season. And Down, I think the aim for Down is to get up to Division 2 next season and have a good Ulster Championship campaign. That's going to be difficult now next year. Really, really difficult. We talk about Armagh in the minute. You have Donegal there. You have Tyrone. You have Monaghan. Like, you have a lot of good teams there in the Ulster Championship, and it'll be very, very tough for Down to get a run in it. But I think this Down team have the capabilities of doing it. You look at the likes of the Burren players, the likes of Kilcoo players, Conor Laverty at the wheel. Now Kieran Mina's there as well. I think Down could do some serious things next season.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think they're good. I think they'll be definitely pushing to get out of Division 3. I think that's the first thing that they need to take care of. Limerick, I don't think will bounce back to go back up. Clare, look, Colm Collins isn't there anymore, but I do still think that they'll be serious contenders to get out of Division 3 immediately. So I think it's Clare, Down, Westmeath. They're kind of the three that I'm looking at immediately as being teams that I expect to push for promotion. So it'll be interesting to see which one comes out of them. Now, another big managerial coup, potentially. See how it goes. Kilkenny Camogie, obviously they announced a new Camogie manager. Peter Chapclair was announced as Brian Dowling's replacement in the Kilkenny Camogie hot seat. So obviously Brian Dowling, majorly successful with the Kilkenny Camogie team. You think of the All-Irelands in 2022, 2020. He got the best out of the likes of Denise Gall, Miriam Walsh, Grace Walsh, like fantastic players in there in that team. He stepped away and Peter Chapclair comes in to replace him. What's your initial thoughts on this appointment?
Like, it's kind of a very Kilkenny-esque appointment when you think about it, because I don't know who this guy is here. I honestly don't know. But at the same time, I didn't know who Brian Downing particularly was when he went into the Camogie job, and look what he did. So I think the Kilkenny Camogie board know what they're doing. We have to trust in them to see if they got the right manager. It's kind of like Galway as well. Like, Galway, Kilkenny always see Cork as well, seem to always get the right manager at the right time. And I think this guy clearly the Kilkenny Camogie board believe in him. So I think he's definitely worth a shot for the Camogie job, and it's going to be very interesting to see what Kilkenny do next season. And like if Aoife Doyle is back to full fitness, if Miriam Walsh is back at full fitness, Denise Gall is obviously still firing. I think Kilkenny could still have a good year next year. Like they have some excellent players all over the field. So I think, look, if the Kilkenny board think this is the right appointment, it's the right appointment, and it'll be interesting to see how he gets on next year. What is kind of interesting as well, Séamus, is I've read anyway, it's a 1-year term. So I don't know what
Yeah.
that means. Like, is he going to be reviewed after the first year? And if he does badly, then they sack him? I don't know, to be honest with you. But it seems kind of weird. Like, you usually give a 3-year term or a 4-year term, but a 1-year term is a bit unheard of.
Yeah, it's a bit strange. I mean, you'd wonder, does that kind of take away from his authority with the team as well? Because if he kind of tries to draw a line in the sand and say, well, you're either with me or against me to this Kilkenny team, and he's only there for a year, like some top players might be like, well, if we get knocked out at the quarterfinals, you won't be here next year. So like it does kind of make out, potentially does kind of undermine his authority somewhat, but I'll be interested to see how he does. And when you're talking about with Kilkenny, it does seem to be an overarching thing. Like they've never really gone for a flashy appointment. Like I don't mean this in a bad way. When Derek Ling was appointed, he pretty much was like, you had Eddie Brennan there as an option, you had Michael Fennelly there as an option, you had Henry Shefflin there as an option, and they went for Derek Ling. And look, Derek Ling's done a very, very good job with this Kilkenny team. Like his first year getting to an All-Ireland final, winning a Leinster Championship, like that's a good year. But when you look at it and you're like, I feel like when you look at players like Henry Shefflin and Eddie Brennan, you feel like they're destined to manage Kilkenny at some time. And it's like they don't buy into the media hype. And you're looking at it for Kilkenny as well. On the Camogie side, again, as you said, this guy is very under the radar. I don't know a lot about him. And I'll be very interested to see how he does, though. How can he fill into Brian Dowling's shoes? Because Dowling's left some big ones there. And look, they had a poor year last year. They were knocked out at the quarter-final stage. They became the first one out of that holy trinity of Kilkenny, Galway and Cork in years to not reach the semi-finals. So it was a poor year. There's no sugarcoating it. And next year, I think that they're more than capable of coming back. They still have the core of a team that won the All-Ireland. So I would be very, very worried about playing them next season, especially when you look at Cork. Matthew Toomey's not there anymore. Like the demographic has changed already since Cork won that All-Ireland final. So it'd be very interesting to see how the environment is looking come this time championship. So the next one we're going to look at a player stepping away. And I briefly touched on this in my introduction to the episode. Now, it will be a brief one. We'll be inside 20-25 minutes. But JARLY O'Byrne's, who is always a player that I thought was arguably Armagh's most complete player. I know that that's pretty out there to say that when they've got someone like Rian O'Neill, but JARLY O'Byrne's delivers constantly for Armagh. And he stepped away from the panel for 2024. And like in a year where I think Kieran McGeeney has to win something, that is the worst possible start.
It is, yeah. Usually you would be surprised by this news. Like, he seemed happy at the Armagh setup and things like that. He played well under Kieran McGeeney. He seems to know what he's doing on the field for Armagh. He seems to believe in Kieran McGeeney. But I think the elephant in the room, Séamus, his dad's the president.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's why Jared O'Byrne stepped away. And maybe he just kind of felt awkward with this. Maybe because of this, like there was jokes going on online that Jared O'Byrne should be captain of Armagh, so father could hand the Sam Maguire to son and things like that. And I don't know, that's a bit of unsettling talk in my opinion. So yeah, it's a shame. It really is a shame because he's one of the most enjoyable players to watch in the field for Armagh. To be fair, Armagh have some brilliant players throughout the team, but Jared O'Byrne in particular is very, very enjoyable to watch. So it's a shame that he has stepped away, but I can see why he has done. And maybe it probably teaches the GA families don't have a father as a GA president and have a son as an intercounty player, because it's going to end in tears eventually.
Yeah, and like, look, personally, I'm like, look, that definitely could play into it. That is literally the president of the association. But you look at it like, for example, even a close to home example, like you look at the Costellos and like their club mates of mine, and and John is doing all the work with Dublin, and Cormac plays for Dublin, and like that dynamic seems to be fine. And there's been plenty down through the years, like Paddy O'Shea managing Dara, Tomas, and Mark, and how many fathers have been the coaches of teams that their sons have been playing for. Kieran Kingston managing Shane Kingston, so many that you could go into that. Like we'd be here all day if we were to run through managers that have managed their son at intercounty level. So like it is possible, but I don't think it would be the main reason as to why he stepped away. I think the reason he might have stepped away is just like, hey, he's a young guy. Maybe he wants to go and do things in the next year of his life. Maybe he wants to go traveling. Maybe he got a job offer abroad. Maybe it's something completely unrelated that he's just privately said, you know what, GA just doesn't fit into my timetable this year. And like, it takes up a hell of a lot of time. I get it. Like, you're busy. That's no problem. But he's a huge loss there, man. Like the next question I want to throw to you is, how much does this hamper Armagh's chances of winning silverware next season?
It shouldn't hamper them winning silverware next season, but you look at other counties that are probably the same demographic as Armagh. Tyrone have lost players, a bunch of players over the last few seasons that still have gone on to win Ulster Championships and All Irelands, etc., etc., etc. Donegal have had players step away, like Kevin Cassidy in 2011, still went on to win the All Ireland. There's Ulster counties in the past that have lost some key players to their team and have gone on to do some better things. So it might go two ways. It'll be a loss in the sense that he's a brilliant player for Armagh. He's very, very versatile. He can play wing back. He can play midfield. He could even play centre back if Armagh really, really wanted him to. But maybe a loss like this could bring the team together too. Maybe there's a few players in that Armagh squad that might think, I have a chance to step up here. You look at Greg McCabe. You look at I'm trying to think of somebody, Shane McPartland. Maybe they'd be thinking, there's a chance for us to step up here. There's a chance for us to be the main man now that JARLY Oak is gone. So there's that the back of players' minds as well. And Kieran McGeady might believe in that, and there'll be a bit of competition, and that's always going to be healthy for Armagh going forward. So it could be a good thing, it could be a bad thing, it could go either way. I suppose we'll have to see the proof of the pudding next season.
That's it. And I'm like, it is one of those things that genuinely only time will tell. And it's a great point about Cassidy leaving Donegal. It's a great point about Kieran Whelan leaving Dublin, and then they pushed on. Like, so many players have stepped away just before big moments in that county's reign. So, like, speaking of players, obviously at the end of the year, we all take a moment to acknowledge the players that shone in the year. So, like, you've done videos on it yourself. Aaron's done a great video on it as well. The player of the year candidates across all four codes were mentioned. So we'll run through them really quickly, and then we'll say who out of the three do we think should get it, and then who do we think will get it. And what's funny is I gave footballer of the year to James McCarthy. A lot of people did. He isn't even nominated in the official one, which is interesting. Brendan Rodgers, who I think is a great shout. Like, Brendan Rodgers for me was flawless throughout the championship. I don't know what more Brendan Rodgers could have done. I do agree with Aaron that Shane McGuigan for me was definitely worthy of a shout as well. Brian Fenton for me, absolutely fantastic. And David Clifford does have to get in. Like, it's one of those things that, like, Brian Fenton for me, I always look at it and I'll always say this. For me, footballer of the year or player of the year, if you're talking about, for me, it's like effectiveness. Because if you're talking like who's the best footballer in the country, it is David Clifford. So if you're going to play like a footballer of the year, well, he should get it pretty much every single year. My criteria for it right now in this moment, maybe it'll change, is my criteria for it is if you were to remove this player from the championship, they change the whole dynamic of the championship if they are taken out. So if you take Brian Fenton out of Dublin, what do Dublin do? If you take Brendan Rodgers out of Derry, what do Derry achieve? If you take David Clifford out of Kerry, what do Kerry achieve? And from that perspective, I think you throw Shane McGuigan in there at the very least, because he, as Aaron rightly said, carried the scoring for Derry in so many games. Like, do you agree with the criteria, or which would you kind of label it down as?
It's a very tough one, and I even put out a tweet that 3 players in particular, other than the 3 that were selected, would feel very hard done by. One of them is a player that you picked as player of the year, and I picked as player of the year, James McCarthy. I actually can't believe it, really. And the fact he's nominated as a midfielder, and Brendan Rodgers and Brian Fenton are in the midfield category, he's not going to get an All-Star either.
That is meant.
It's incredible.
Like that.
It's really. I don't know. It seems strange, doesn't it? Because James McCarthy, I think, was head and shoulders nearly above everybody.
But then again, you would never know. Like Brian Whelan got hurler of the year one year, and he didn't get an All-Star. This is way back when. This is like 1990s. I think they had a different criteria for it back then as to how this happened. I think it was like the players voted for it or something, but he got like player of the year in a year that he didn't get an All-Star. So I think it's like, doesn't necessarily mean McCarthy won't get it. Maybe they'll shoehorn him back into right half back to get him into the team. Like one year they put Colin Kavanagh at fullback. So you never know. But I think for me, McCarthy has to be considered. Do you think they should up it to 5 players?
Possibly. And the other 2 that I was going to mention, they're very hard done by. Shane McGuigan, obviously, and I agree with yourself for that. He carried the score mantle for Derry this season, and without him, Derry wouldn't be in the All-Ireland semi-final. Simple as that. So, yeah, he has to be in the conversation as well. Another one, and Aaron thought about this, and the more I thought about it, the more I agreed with him, Colin Basquel.
Yeah.
Because look at them, top scorer from play, set up that goal for Paddy Small, which was so crucial in that All-Ireland final, was probably Dublin's best forward throughout the season as well. So he deserves a nomination, in my opinion, because of that. But it's obviously down to 3, and it's a very, very tough call to do it. And I definitely would agree with you on that criteria. If you take out those 3 players out of the teams, what would they have achieved? And for me, Brian Fenton, if you took him out of it, in the latter stages particularly, Dublin would have struggled against Monaghan. Against Mayo, they wouldn't have got back into the game in the second half. Or without James McCarthy, they wouldn't have got back into the game either. But that's a discussion for another day, should I say. Kerry, arguably Dublin still would have got over the line, but I think they would have struggled more against Monaghan if Brian Fenton wasn't there. No, we go on to David Clifford. They would have got over the line against Tyrone because Clifford didn't do much really in that game. We watched that game, both of us. Against Dublin, wouldn't have made a difference. The only game in then 3 important games that you could say David Clifford was vital to carry in was against Derry. He's 1 out of 3 really constitute footballer of the year. No doubt, David Clifford's the greatest footballer in the country at the moment. But was he genuinely player of the year? When you look at the 3 games in Croke Park, for me, no. I wouldn't have him. And another thing, 55% shot accuracy across the 3 games. Cormac Costello achieved 100%, and he's not nominated. Nowhere near. So, like, these stats, they do not lie. And I think David Clifford doesn't deserve footballer of the year because of that. Brendan Rodgers is a great shout. But I think actually the last time between football and hurling, the last player to get a football or a player of the year when their county only got to the semi-final, correct me if I'm wrong, James, but I think it was Austin Gleeson from Waterford. I think
so.
Could be someone else.
Like I'm flicking through it in my head in the hurling. Like I know Tony Kelly didn't get it apart from 2013.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
Limerick have hoovered them up on the hurling the last few years. On the football, it's been all Dublin. Yeah, I would say so. I mean, I was thinking Bernard Brogan on the football side.
That was 2010, though. That was 13 years ago.
Yeah, no, but on the football side, has anybody
achieved it since then? I don't think so. I know in 2011 it was Alan, wasn't it? Alan Brogan. 2012.
Alan Brogan won it in 2011, yeah, but Dublin won the All Ireland that year.
2012 was Carl Lacey, etc. So no, I don't think there's been any.
Every year. Do you know what? Every year since it's come from a finalist, yeah.
Yeah, it has. Like even Mayo, I know Lee Keegan and Andy Moore won, but at least they got to the final. So that's what I'm saying. Brendan Rodgers is a great shout. I definitely agree with that, but I don't see him winning it. I don't, simply. And that's just
I'd give it to Rodgers. I would give it to Rodgers. Yeah. Because I like people will be like, what? He's been fantastic in every game. And this is the other thing you have to talk about. He has to be good in every game. Derry don't have any gimmies. Also, Championship is ridiculously competitive. Kerry can sleepwalk through Munster. Sleepwalk through Munster. They hit 5 goals past Clare in like what was just not a contest. The game against Tipperary was not a contest. Tyrone barely got out of bed for that game. Derry was the time where they got hit with their first challenge. And like as you said, David Clifford didn't play well against Tyrone. So he played very well against Clare, who offered no resistance. Then he was fabulous against Derry, like unbelievably good against Derry. And then he was okay in the final, but not great. And then all of a sudden, everyone's saying footballer of the year. Like, what are you talking about? He had a good game against Derry and a good game against a Clare team that were beaten before the ball was thrown in. How are you telling me that he deserves footballer of the year? You look at Brendan Rodgers on the other side. You take him out of Derry, I don't think they win the Ulster title.
Really?
Yeah. Brendan Rodgers got the goal and consistently won the ball for Derry at big moments and scored a couple of great points. And you look at how amazing he was in the semi-final against Kerry. He was solid as a rock against Cork. In every game that he's played for Derry, he's given every inch of himself to it. Brian Fenton, again, Brian Fenton's an amazing footballer, but if Brian Fenton was taken out of that Dublin team, we still would have got through Leinster. We still would have beat Mayo, in my opinion. We still would have beat Monaghan. And we would have made an All-Ireland final. Don't get me wrong, did Fenton help achieve that? Absolutely. But I still think Dublin would have made it as far as the All-Ireland final without him. Would we have won the All-Ireland without him? Tough to say. Tough to say, because he is such a good footballer that it is difficult to take him away and say, yeah, we would have beaten Kerry without him. That's a little bit dramatic to come out and say. But for me, if you're talking, take all 3 of them out of their teams. Take Fenton out of Dublin, take Clifford out of Kerry, and take Rodgers out of Derry. And you tell me which county has a more different season than what they had. I think Derry's season dramatically changes if Rodgers goes. I think Armagh beat them in that Ulster final. And then they go into a different position in the group and their whole year is different.
It's interesting. It really is interesting. Actually, as a matter of interest, if Rodgers wasn't there against Cork, what do you think would have happened?
I probably think Derry probably still would have beat Cork because Derry's system kind of overrides the players. It takes someone out, puts someone in. But I still think Rodgers goes above and beyond. So in those big games when it's going down to the wire, I think that's when Rodgers' true quality comes out. But it's so difficult to say truly what happens. But my whole point about this is, what does Brendan Rodgers have to do to win Footballer of the Year? Like, if we're having a serious conversation here, we've openly discussed this. In my opinion, it will be one of Fenton and Clifford that will win it. And like, it will be one of them two. But you're looking at it saying, what does Brendan Rodgers have to do to win it? Like, we've already established this, that Clifford had, he played against Tipperary, didn't he?
He did. I don't think he did for some reason.
I don't think he did. But so Clifford played 4 games in the championship. Then knockout, like actual, like if you lose, you're out of the championship that you're in. So he played 4 games against Clare, against Derry, and then Tyrone and Dublin. And if you want to count the ones that weren't straight knockout, he had the Mayo game, which he was really, really good in. Like, you have to give him that. He was carrying the fight to Mayo. Then the Cork game, he was relatively quiet in that game. And then what was the last team in the group? Louth, who just, again, no resistance.
To be fair though, Séamus, I will say this, I don't think Clifford deserves Footballer of the Year, but I will say this, I think he performed very well against Cork. And Kerry wouldn't have got out of Parky Heave with a win if Clifford wasn't there.
Yeah,
that's just my honest opinion.
He slotted away the penalty.
Yeah.
It's just, my point is, I'm saying, like, I think out of those 3, I'd give it to Rodgers. I was nearly going to give it to Rodgers anyway over McCarthy. Just
Even at that
really
time,
rate him. I think he's a fantastic player.
jeez. Like I
Like,
wouldn't like Brendan Rodgers wouldn't have been more in my mind, to be honest, at that stage. Like it's jeez, it is a tough one. And like
who
mine
would
is
you
to the
give it
three
to
nominations.
out of those three?
Personally, I give it to Fenton.
And Fenton, that would be Fenton's third footballer of the year.
Yeah, yeah, but
I mean, you're talking about Clifford being the greatest of all time. Fenton, 3 footballer of the years.
yeah. But to
Does
be
he
honest,
have to start
Seamus,
being considered greatest of all time if he wins third footballer of the year?
Clifford, Seamus Clifford isn't even 25 yet.
True. But like, does Fenton have a claim to being footballer of the year? Like we mentioned, he's on the short list to potentially win the award. He's won it twice already. If he wins a third one, I mean, surely he has to be up there as greatest of all time. Like midfield anyway for me should be locked down if he wins a third.
Yeah,
Like greatest
I
midfielder of all time.
definitely has to. Yeah. But what I would say about this discussion, Seamus, there'll be a lot of Kerry fans complaining about this.
Like, I mean, the stats don't lie. Like the guy didn't lose for how many years? He joined the Dublin senior team in 2015. It took him 6 years to lose his first game with Dublin.
Yeah.
2021 semi-final against Mayo was his first loss. He's won 7 All-Irelands. He's won 2015 to 2023, and until he finishes his career, Leinster titles. And if he gets 3 footballer of the years, I mean, it's quite difficult to say. In my opinion, there's no doubt he is on the greatest team of all time. If you to make it best 15 that have ever played the game, Fenton goes in there for me. But yeah, for me, I'd give it to Rodgers. I'd give it to Rodgers. I think he won't get it, but I think Rodgers he's the type of player as well that every player can look up to, because I do genuinely mean this. Fenton, and I mean this in such a respectful way to Rodgers as well. His engine is inhuman. But when you look at like Clifford, and when you look at Fenton, and you look at the skill that they have, and you look at the size that they have, and you look at like Fenton is head and shoulders literally above everybody all the time. He looks like he was designed in a lab for how to make the perfect GA midfielder. Clifford looks like he was designed in a lab for how to make the perfect Gaelic footballer. Brennan Rodgers is like just pure hard work. And I don't mean that in a disrespectful way. Like Rodgers is the type of guy that everyone could look at and think he just works his socks off. Every time he steps over that line, he leaves nothing behind. And the fact that he doesn't have like that kind of almost God-given skill, but he's still up there with the best footballers in the country, just speaks to his work ethic.
Yeah, it definitely does. It really, really does. It actually, I'm intrigued actually to know Shea McGuigan and Brendan Rodgers. If you took them two in particular out of their team, they wouldn't achieve much, would they?
No, no way.
So,
What does McGuigan have to do to get one? Derry have to win the All-Ireland from McGuigan to get one.
yeah, definitely. Or he has to get the top scorer from play.
Yeah. Well, it didn't work for Collie Pascal, did it?
No, it didn't. To be honest, no. No, but to be honest, Seamus, about that, you'd hear the excuses for Colin Basket. Oh, they're playing Leash and Loud because he got top score. He's top scorer for play because they played Leash and Loud. Kerry played
Mayo.
Clare.
Yeah, Clare, Tipperary, Louth. Kerry played Louth as well.
Yeah. So
that is what it is.
yeah,
But yeah, so I'd give it to Rodgers and you'd give it to Fenton. So neither of us gave it to Clifford on that occasion. And what's funny is when myself and yourself did the show with Aaron, and we were having the debate about who should win Footballer of the Year and everything. I sounded so passionately that David Clifford should get Footballer of the Year, but actually, look, I think he absolutely deserved it last season. But this season, I would just shade it to Rodgers. That's my honest opinion. Now, LGFA Footballer of the Year candidates, they also got released. There's 3, again, 2 from Dublin here and 1 from Kerry. So Kerry's one is Louise Ní Bhearr-Hertig, Dublin's one's Jennifer Dunn and Leah Caffrey. Now, 3 very different years for all, 1 a back, 1 a midfielder and 1 a forward. Now, immediately again, it's kind of a similar case. You're looking at it, Louise, absolutely by far the best player in the country throughout the championship, and then the final came round and was quiet in the final. Jennifer Dunn and Leah Caffrey were very solid throughout and then were amazing in the final. Like, which do you think should kind of count for more?
The thing is as well, look, this isn't like a Clifford situation for Louise Ní Bhearr-Hertig, because in the semi-final and in crucial games for Kerry this season, I think Louise, her scoring record, she was the top scorer for play and overall this season.
Mm-hmm.
That was incredible, really. I think the closest, honestly, is Jennifer Dunn. I think it's between Jennifer Dunn and Louise Ní Bhearr-Hertig. I personally would have gone Lauren McGee to Leah Caffrey, but that's just that's opinions and all that. I'd personally go for Louise. I'd personally go for her. I think she's been absolutely exceptional for Kerry, from play, from general scoring. I think she's been absolutely outstanding for Kerry this season. And let's not forget, she had a quiet final, but she still got a goal to try and get Kerry back into the game that day. So, she still contributes a lot there. In the semi-final, she was just majestic. Absolutely majestic, Séamus. So, for me, I go for Louise Ní Bhearr-Hertig. I think I know who you're going to go for. You're going to go for Jennifer Dunn.
Yeah, I mean, I probably would shade it just to her, but I can definitely... Do you know what? I genuinely am on the fence here. I genuinely am on the fence. Jennifer or Louise. It was just being in Croke Park and seeing how important Jennifer Dunn is to Dublin. Anytime Kerry had Dublin kind of penned in, Dublin kicked the ball out to Jennifer Dunn. Every time. And she always got it, held it, moved the ball really, really well, immediately settled the whole thing down. I don't think you can underestimate how important that is in an All-Ireland final, to have a player that is just an out ball and a guaranteed ball winner. Jennifer Dunn is vital, and I hope she still plays for Dublin. I know she's going to Australia, but yeah, hopefully I'm kind of naively hoping that she'll still be kicking around next season. But yeah, I probably would shade it to Jen. But you know what? Genuinely, on the fence here. I've genuinely very little preference between the two. If Louise gets it, she deserves it. If Jennifer gets it, she deserves it, in my opinion. So, and like, no disrespect to Leah Caffrey, she had an awesome year and did as good a job on Louise as I've ever seen anybody do on Louise Ní Bhearr-Hertig in that final. She kept her out away from the goal, and that made it much more difficult for Louise to get any shots off. And I think that quelled her influence a lot. So yeah, genuinely me there, a little bit sitting on the fence, but for me, Louise or Jennifer Dunn, I'm happy out with either of them. Also, the hurler and camogie player of the year, those candidates came through. So hurler of the year, all Limerick affair. Which one would you kind of go for? The Limerick jersey on here, for me, it's Aaron Gallan. Would you have any disagreements with that?
I wouldn't know. And I actually wrote an article about this on Limerick Voice, so just an opportunity. So check that website if you haven't already. It's a students kind of website, journalism students for UL fourth year. So check that out if you haven't already. I have a sports article up about this topic, about the All Star nominees, and it's incredible for Limerick. 14 All Stars. They deserve it. They absolutely deserve it. What a team they are. 3 nominees, and actually David Byrne put up an interesting stat on this. If Dermot Burns or Aaron Gallan win it, 4 out of the last 6 Player of the Year winners have come from the same club, Patrick's Mill. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Like, I don't remember such a club dominating this sort of award. It's incredible, really. And the fact is, as well, when's the last time they won a Limerick Senior Hurling Championship? I think it was 2016.
Yeah. Nuts.
How won a Limerick Championship with these players, with the Cian Lynches, the Dermot Burns, and the Aaron Gallans? Personally, for me, I think every one of the 3 has a very good shout. Obviously, all Ireland champions have contributed well to Limerick, and there's differing opinions. Obviously, Burns won it last year. Kyle Hayes is RTE's choice. I'd go for Gallan, though, same as yourself. Like, the guy was absolutely outstanding this year, and even in the final against Kilkenny, he was seen to be held, but he found a way, like every other Limerick player, to get on the score sheet and get a load of points. Like in that semi-final against Galway in particular, the guy was unbelievable. In the Munster final, when he dragged Limerick out of a hole, he was incredible against Clare. So for me, for the whole season, I go for Aaron Gillane, but I wouldn't begrudge any of them winning it because they're exceptional players.
No, I absolutely agree with you. Absolutely agree. I think Gillane, just when he came back into the Limerick team as well, it was just like Limerick are back. Like they're back at 100%. I think we talked about who could get injured and who could go missing. And look, do I still think Limerick could be favourites for the All Ireland if Gillane was out? Yes, I do. But Gillane gives them the goal factor. Gillane can just get a goal out of nothing. And he did it time and time again throughout the championship to just turn games dramatically in Limerick's favour. So I think he's awesome for this Limerick team. And for me, yeah, hurler of the year, no doubt about it. The final list of candidates that came in was the Camogie Player of the Year. So we got 2 in here from Cork, Amy O'Connor and Saoirse McCarthy they are, and Beth Carton from Waterford has also been nominated for Camogie Player of the Year. Now, for me, there's an obvious one that jumps out. Hat-trick in the All-Ireland final. Amy O'Connor from Cork. Saoirse McCarthy, unbelievable. And for me, she takes Young Player of the Year. Beth Carton was absolutely outstanding as well. But would you have any disagreements with that?
Wouldn't really, but it's actually brilliant to see Saoirse McCarthy in the list, and she was actually on my podcast previously as well. Like, I'm delighted for Saoirse, absolutely delighted, and she deserves it this season. And for Amy O'Connor as well. Like Amy O'Connor, she's followed by account for the last year now. She's been thankful for the stats and stuff like that. And the score hat-trick in the All-Ireland final, how incredible. You know, how could you not give a player of the year for a girl that scored a hat-trick in an All-Ireland final? She was the first player to score a hat-trick in the
minutes as
All-Ireland
well.
final. Yeah, that's the thing. Like the last player other than Amy O'Connor to score a hat-trick in an All-Ireland final across the 4 codes was Shane O'Donnell in 2013. Before that, it was Lark Corbett in 2010. It's very, very rare. And Amy O'Connor did that. So for me, I think she's the undoubted player of the year, even though Beth Carton and Saoirse McCarthy themselves have had outstanding years.
Yeah, no, absolutely agree with that. Couldn't have said it better myself. For me, Amy O'Connor takes the Camogie Player of the Year. Saoirse McCarthy takes the Young Player of the Year. I think Beth Carton deserves immense credit. Amazing for Waterford as they made their first final, and God knows how long. I know it was the 1940s. I think 1945 was the last time they made it. So Beth Carton deserves all the credit because, I mean, she led them very much from the front to that All-Ireland final. So there's huge credit. But for me, you can't look past Amy O'Connor. Anyway, all out of news, all out of stories. It's been longer than I thought it would be. I thought it would be about 20, 25 minutes. We've gone 43 minutes. Big thank you to Matthew for joining us for this episode again. Thanks to anyone that watched along and left any comments here. I'll flick through them all as well and make sure to respond to them. Thanks very much for joining us for another episode of GA News here on An Cluiche. From myself, from Matthew, take care.